Now, the one I want to ask you about is your recent trip to the USA.
Yes, yes.
What had changed the most since you'd last been there?
I think there's not much really, even around Venice. I think might have been a few more apartment complexes going up in Venice and downtown, but the main thing I did notice, out the front of Gold's along the Hampton Avenue and around the back of Gold's in that street, and around different other areas around Venice and down near the beach and on the beach, the homeless. A lot more homeless. And pretty much the whole sidewalk is taken up of tents.
Really?
They sleep in the tents, and then during the day they pack them up, because sometimes if they've got too much junk there, the council comes along and whatever's there they just throw it in the back of the truck and take it. So yeah, so I'm thinking next time I go over, if I pay the gym fee, I can use the showers and toilets. I just put a tent on the side of the street. Yeah, there was tents everywhere, and even down on the far end of the Venice beach, there was all tents there, but then even people had tents on the sea. And yeah, but the street behind the gym, it was just packed with tents, people living there.
Because we've seen those videos doing the rounds of, when they drive through areas in the US, and literally it's like tents everywhere, but it really does exist.
Yeah, it's a lot worse than since I was there, yeah. Because you might have had, around Gold, you might have had one or two of those like little bus type vans that someone would live in, where the windows are blacked out, like a little bus or mobile home. And there's a couple of them still, but now just on the sidewalk itself, some of the sidewalk you can't walk down, you've got to walk on the road bit, because the sidewalk's just lined with tents and buckets, and some people have bikes in front of their tents, and then they have a shopping trolley with all their possessions in it. So around that area it was like a lot more since I was there.
And was that more widespread through...
I see it because I was around Venice there it was, and then Santa Monica I saw it there, and then I was staying downtown, and some of the underpasses and bridges down there, there was just as much down there too.
And what about in Vegas?
Vegas was only on the strip area. You didn't really see any around there. There was a few people walking around looking like they were homeless, but not really. I think it's probably more pushed back so it's away from the tourist. I think those casinos probably have more security and police going up and down to keep it, looking somewhat cleaner. But yeah, I didn't really notice any around, not the main areas in Vegas. I'm sure if you went back a few streets or to some of the outer-lying suburbs, there probably would be. But then it's so hot too, you wouldn't want to be in a tent there, would you?
Yeah. No, well, that's really sad to hear that that people,
considering all the wealth you have in America and stuff, and people are still living like that. Okay, granted, some people choose to live that way, but then there are some that, just can't get ahead and get a leg up. And when we were at Denny's having a meal at Denny's, two came in off the street along Hollywood Boulevard, and one of them was in at Denny's in the restroom having a bath, trying to clean up as much as he could. So, when you see, like I said, the amount of money that's around, and the amount of millionaires and billionaires, and the amount of money that people waste, and then you see people living like that, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, I think that's the question that we have to solve. The answers put forward so far.
Surely, there are some rich people that do help out and give back, but then sometimes, there's a lot that give a little back. It's like, if you're worth a couple of $100 million and you give $1,000 here or there, that's not really much. That's nothing really fancy. It's like, It's like, you're giving $1,000. You look, I gave $1,000 to the homeless. Oh, here, honey, here's his $20,000 handbag I just brought you. So, you'll spend a couple of $1,000, $20,000, thank you, $20,000 on a handbag, or go buy a new car for a couple of $100,000, but I gave $1,000 to the homeless people, so I did my part. So it's, $1,000's not really much, as you're wearing your $100,000 watch or something. So.
Well, even the mega rich, like they say, I gave 10 million or something like that.
That's just a tax write-off to them. They wouldn't even, if some of those people that are worth billions, they wouldn't even, it's crazy it's like they do the whole, it's like when we have here in Australia, these big top CEOs. Okay, it's good they bring awareness to like the homeless people here in Australia when they have that sleep out thing.
Yep.
But here they are sleeping out in a nice stadium. They've given them nice big comfortable sleeping bags. They're in covered shelter somewhere in like a car park of a sporting stadium. They've got food trucks there and coffee and toilets set up for them. So this one night of you sleeping outside, almost like you're camping in a tent, doesn't really, you know, it's nothing compared to what the homeless people go through. Okay, it brings a bit of light to it, but then you see these guys and they say, well, I've give this much, like you said, $10,000. Mate, you're worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
Whoopie fucking do. You could probably all put your money together and maybe get some of these dilapidated apartments or hotels that are run down, do it up, and with the interest you could just keep that place going, you know, for people like a halfway, not a place to live forever, but a place just for people to stay so they can get on their feet again and then get a job and get out there, because some of these people just don't get a chance because they're living on the streets. They might not have clothes, they look all rugged, so they've, you know, not taking care of themselves anymore. If they had a place to stay and live, they might be able to, you know, have a little place they can call home and start to do themselves up, look good, get a bit of respect about themselves again, and go out and get a job and then move out and go back to society. But sadly it doesn't happen that way. It seems the richer get richer and they just buy more shit.
Yeah,
They say, oh, it's sad about the homeless. Come on, let's go to the private jet now. You know.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what the answer is. I mean, the answer the politicians put forward.
The politicians, they don't do shit. They're too busy lining their own pockets. And to me too, it's like, okay, we all like to make money and, you know, be wealthy, but you got to think, some of these people, when's enough?
Yeah.
When you got homes in every country, when you got private jets, when you got this, when your family's set for life, they're never going to need anything again, you're worth billions. Well, there must come to a point where it's like, what more can I buy or do?
Yeah.
It's like I'd get more joy helping others than buying myself a new Lamborghini or Ferrari and shit. It's like, it's just crazy when you see some of those people and they have like, okay, it's their money, they can do what they want, but when they got like 20 sports cars or 50 sports cars worth billions of dollars total, it's like, you can only drive one car a day. It's like, well, what do you fucking do?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I mean, look.
And then they go past people on the street and go, oh, that's so sad, isn't it? I was like, you know, you give them a bit of change. I remember, was it last year or something, when Malcolm Turnbull gave a homeless guy $5. He opened up his wallet, there was a 20 in there and a 5. And the camera, he gave him the 5. They were like, you had a 20, Malcolm. You know, here's Malcolm Turnbull worth, what, a couple of $100 million, him and his wife. And he gives a homeless person a $5 note when he had a 20 in his wallet as well. Shit, I've given homeless people 20s or $50 notes from time to time if that's all I've got. Like, oh, fuck it. You know, they're going to use it more than I could, so whatever. But
oh, and they reckon the bloke on the $5 note started blinking when he came out.
But you remember that when it was in the paper? They were saying how cheap he was because he had the 20 and the 5 and he gave him the 5. Then there's a guy that's worth a couple $100 million. It's like, really? I'm sure he probably said to the guy beside him, hey, can you get me a receipt for that?
Yeah.
I want to claim that.
Oh, look, I think the answer is that that's everyone needs a job.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this thing with minimum wage and stuff, you know, from an economic point of view, if you keep increasing wages, the cost of everything's going to go up. So
that's okay. If the wages went up, that would be good. But as long as everything else doesn't,
yeah, that's
because at the moment it's like housing prices go up. Look at electricity since they sold that off. The big spiel was, let's sell off the power poles and make prices cheaper. You know, they got people turning their finger. Well, look at Barnaby Joyce. He's on the news now complaining that he's finding it hard to keep his 2 families because he gets like $211,000 a year. And God knows what else he's got on top of that with all these perks, but it's like, shut the fuck up. But you know, everything goes up, petrol, electricity, the cost of living, homes and that, and the prices, you know, the wages don't really go up accordingly. But when you look at things, Australians probably get some of the best wages in the world, but everything else is just so expensive here now, it doesn't really... Like if you got your wages here in America, you'd be great, you know?
Yeah.
In American dollars, but...
Until you got sick over there.
And then you go to the hospital and you're shut.
Yeah.
Even in Australia here, I wonder, I'd love to see a breakdown, because I had a thing on TV just a couple of weeks ago. Could have been one of those ambulance shows I was watching, and they were saying like someone, if they come in the emergency room, one person for one night in emergency care is $35,000 here. I'm like, I'd like to see a breakdown of how it comes to $35,000, but I think they're getting ripped off. They're ripping off insurance companies, and then
Yeah.
the hospitals rip off the government. Because even when they got to raise these money for machines for children, or like, the children that are born early, or people with cancer, they say this one machine here, and you look at the machine, they say this machine here is worth $25 million, and you're like, what the fuck? These companies are just ripping off the government who has to pay for it. The thing itself's probably only worth what? Probably a couple of $100,000. It's the same with medication. Remember, I was saying that some of these medications only cost a few cents to make, but it's like unless it's on the PBS for the people to get through the government, they sell them for like thousands and thousands of dollars when it only costs a couple of cents to make these tablets.
Yeah.
So it's just a joke. That's where the problem lies. These big companies are ripping the governments off. I'm sure we see it when they're building highways, freeways, or these light rail, which what this one here in Sydney's gone over budget now by how much? And really, it's like, I think I told that story once of that school crossing they wanted to put in, and they said we can't afford it. Just in some little local town, they wanted to put in the blinking lights on the crossings and the flashing lights for the crossing sign. And they said, it's $50,000. It's not in the school budget. The state hasn't given us the money for it, so we can't do it. So this guy, he's like electrician, jack of all trades. He went and got all the material, did it himself. Looked exactly like it. He took video, took photos. It looked just like the ones the government does.
Probably better.
Yeah, and he did it for, I think it was close to under $3,000.
Yeah.
But they were saying they needed 50 to do it, but he did it for 3,000, and then because it wasn't done by government, they dug it all up and got rid of it. I'm like, how stupid's that? So the guy's done it. It's in the ground. It's it looks whatever. Just leave it there. But no, they took it out because it wasn't done by government officials and shit like this, or people with whatever. So
no, that I think that's the answer. That like a community's got a problem, the community solves the problem.
Well, generally it is the community in the long run, because look at schools now and stuff. You go to shopping centres. Do you want to give money to the school here? Do you want to give money? I think shouldn't our tax dollars be going to that every time? Do you want to give this token to what school, or do you want to donate to this school? It's like, even though your tax dollars meant to go to it, how many times do we get asked to give more money for this thing, give more money for that thing? It's like, it's crazy.
Well, I think your example's a perfect one. Like if that community had that, ultimately we all pay for that $48,000 of that goes up into thin air. Yeah, sure, it might be paying some bloke 2 weeks to do you might write up a 50-page report that about the.
We've got to do a study on it first and get all people in to get the land. What level's that on there and this and that? What else are they doing with the government now? Look at when they want to do anything. It'll be a year or two of just surveys and paperwork, which cost millions and millions of dollars, and in the end they go, no, we're not going to do it. So they just wasted all this money, and
somewhere along the line, some big business has given a politician a backhander to get the contract for the lights.
Do you remember when they built the new Parliament House? I remember someone came out then when they were talking about fleecing of the country, and they were paying like $10 a nail, and toilet seats were $100 or more. It's just bullshit, someone in government's probably got a mate that owns this, mate that's a contractor, and they pretty much, I've heard before too, there's just like to get in, say like, how they put out these, if they're going to do a job, they send out, quotes of where people can, send in a quote. That generally they said, I've heard there's only like 5 or 6 of the same people all the time.
Yeah.
You can't get in to get them, and generally those 5 or 6 that are in there are friends of people that are in Parliament already, because look at what's his name now, Christopher Pyne, and then you got Julie Bishop. They're both working for big companies out of they used to help when they were in government. There was an inquiry into that last week. They were saying, is it too soon that they're going working for these companies, or is it whatever? And like, well, Baird went working for the banks, didn't he? And got $1 million wage after he retired.
No. He
left to be with family.
Yeah. And then I think he got $2 million.
Yeah.
But it's not the politicians that go working for big business. That's a worry. It's the people that are 1 or 2 rungs down that are telling the politicians, because that's the issue in modern democracy, where,
well, like I said, there's always, it goes back to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all them. They're the ones that run everything. Can't get the politicians just more like figureheads and shit, but there's the people with the money that sit behind them and run everything. It's like,
well, we won't go on that, because that'll be a topic for our conspiracy corner one day.
You'll upset people with the conspiracy.
Yeah. Well,
the moon landing one really upset.
Yeah, when me and you aren't allowed to talk about anything like that, because we're both
We don't know
dads.
anything. There's reflectors on the moon.
Yeah,
How do you think they bounce the
yeah,
laser off the reflector?
Yeah,
Well, probably the same way to put the rover on Mars. They just fucking throw one up there.
Yeah, we're morons. I should be just asking you bodybuilding questions.
Not about the moon. Yeah,
You're not allowed to have an
cunts.
opinion on anything else.
No, not allowed.
So, yeah.
So don't ask me.
Yeah, cut.